Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining. This is our second webinar in the Less Lawn, More Life series. Thank you so much for everyone for joining. We're thrilled to have you, and we are so excited about our guest speaker today, Edwina von Gal. And before we introduce Edwina and get going, I did just want to provide a very quick recap of the challenge for those who are new and just recently joining us. So first of all, I'm Joanna Hall. I'm the CEO of Planet Wild, and I'm joined here by Eve from Bedford 2030, and Planet Wild and Bedford 2030 are co-hosting in partnership with an incredible suite of allies and partners, which we will share in a moment. We are sort of co-hosting the Less Lawn, More Life Challenge. A reminder again for those who are new, the purpose of this challenge is really just to continue to amplify this incredible movement of homeowners, landowners who are beginning to rewild and reduce their lawn to improve the biodiversity, right, and tap into all the amazing climate benefits that come along with that. So one is to educate and support. Two is to inform. So the data that is being captured both through the survey as well as the iNaturalist observations are feeding a very important new data set called the Wilder system, which is going to be able to prove quantifiably that rewilding is actually a massive benefit and impact for species, for humans, for the climate. And then last but not least is to inspire. There's so much wonderful momentum, but we need to keep feeding it and fueling it, that this is the new norm, right? That, wild lawns are beautiful. And so ultimately continue to share and inspire others who maybe, are a little intimidated by beginning down this journey. So these are sort of the goals of the challenge. Quickly, very thrilled to report that we have over 1,400 challenge participants already, and we're just getting started. The Facebook group is thriving. So if you are on Facebook and you want to join, please do so. It's a really great resource for, getting questions answered, support, right, resources. And June from the project team is doing an incredible job updating and sharing resources and answering questions there. Also, so excited. We have already over 1,700 observations of life in people's lawns and in their yards, and already have reached over 20,000 on Instagram and on socials. And we hope that that number will grow because that's how we actually feed and fuel this movement. One ask for anyone that hasn't yet completed the survey. We're going to drop the link into the chat here. It takes less than 2 minutes. It's really easy peasy, but please, it really is one of the starting points for participation, and it really helps. It helps both you and the challenge kind of continue. So please complete that survey. Quick reminder of how this works, right? The challenge, 8 weeks. We're 2 to 3 weeks in at this point. There's one overarching goal. Just take some action on your own property to reduce lawn. That can be a few square feet and you're just experimenting. That can be stop mowing for a little while and just see what happens, right? Take some action and then see what happens. Begin to experiment with this new approach. There are 6 overarching targets. If you have signed up to be a participant, you will receive a weekly email in your inbox. We call it the weekly activation. And I am over the moon to say that everyone that's registered this week, the activation is being hosted by none other than Natasha Bedingfield, who just flew back from the Olympics. So we're very lucky to have these leaders and influencers who are kind of showing that they too are engaging in this journey in their own yards. And then of course, to please continue to make those observations with iNaturalist. So that's it. All of this is both on the LessLawnMoreLife.com website, resources, links, old videos if you missed the kickoff, as well as in the Facebook group. So we're trying to be as supportive as possible, but please do check any of those things out at your leisure. And then last but not least, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. I just want to give a quick shout out to all of our wonderful partners. You can see them all shown here. We have 28 partners to date. We have a few new ones that have just joined us and more coming on all the time. And just wanted to say a big thank you for helping us get the word out. We really could not do this without you. Thank you.
And without further ado, I'm first going to introduce Bram, who is actually running and building the Wilder system, our resident scientist, who's going to introduce Edwina.
All right. Hi, everyone. Can you see me? I'm assuming you can. As Joe said, I'm Bram Gunther. I'm the VP of Planet Wild. I know you're out there in the digital world, so welcome. Edwina is my colleague and friend and a deeply respected landscape designer for her groundbreaking ideas and work on using native plants and residential areas to restore habitat. For much of the modern environmental movement, yards and campuses, commercial space has not been seen as viable for ecological restoration. Edwina long ago saw that it was and spearheaded the rewilding movement. She's also the founder of Perfect Earth Project, a nonprofit that advances nature-based gardening. It's a strong advocacy and educational organization for healthy native plant-based horticulture and landscape design, trying to push the landscaping business away from its core gas-emitting and chemical-heavy products and services. She also infamously said, and I'm paraphrasing here, ending a strictly imposed chemical-based maintenance regime for your lawn is like taking off the corset. You're giving your yard a chance to move, live, and breathe. Thank you, Edwina, for speaking to the Less Lawn, More Life community.
There we go. Thank you, Bram. This is really exciting to be here with you. And wow, how much has changed since we first met and started talking about this? Isn't it fantastic? The time is now. It's happening after all this time. So I'm going to bring up my slides. Let's see. And here we go. This is going to be a lot of slides in a short amount of time. So I'll be talking very fast. And as you know, put your questions into the chat and we'll hopefully get to them all. If we can't, I'm not going anywhere long term. So I can always answer them another time. So this is about making a commitment. And that's really what the challenge is about. But I also like to talk about it in terms of you and your place, that you go outside and you think of it as a part of your family, a partner, that you've made a commitment to it. And when you make a promise, if you don't keep it, if you cheat, well, you know, the relationship just isn't the same. So, you know, so this is where I live. This is the marsh, the salt marsh in Accabonac Harbor outside of East Hampton. I'm not allowed to touch it. So it's kind of out there to remind me that what nature does herself is always a great model. And out front, I have an osprey nest. And I always think of Rachel Carson and the fact that her book, Silent Spring, made it possible for us to have ospreys now. But we kind of got complacent because we thought we were done, and we're not done. As we all know, our bird populations, which are a key indicator of planetary health, are plummeting. And actually, the surprising thing is that they're not the birds you'd expect. These are backyard birds that are declining quickest. You know why? Because we are replacing their habitat. Their habitat was our backyards, and we're not compensating. We're also taking fresh water for granted. We think that that's just going to keep coming, and it's really not. This is very expensive real estate in the center of Southampton. So what is the cause of all of this? Loss of habitat, use of pesticides. It's pretty darn simple, and it's all in our control. We are the answer. I am not waiting for laws to change. I am not waiting. I am doing it. You can do it too. I know Rebecca talked about how many acres of lawn there is, but it's not just lawn, it's trees and shrubs and everything that we have the power to help come back to its natural state and provide healthy habitat. So when we do this, clearly we're not providing habitat. And so nowadays I call it the tyranny of tidiness, or the race to erase, that everybody's trying to get their living rooms to look like nobody lives there. And now it's creeped into our landscapes. So this landscape, which any magazine would tell you is highly aspirational, think about it. If you stopped applying constant attention to this place, what would happen to it? It's in the shapewear, the girdle. This is entirely indicative of a landscape that is designed for dependency, because you can't have one of these on that lawn. You can't have any of these, because what it is this little place, if you stop clipping those trees, flowers get shaded out. If you stop clipping the little hedge, same thing, you lose that bed. If the lawn gets messed up, what do? All of it requires that the landscape industry will have a job on your property forever. So what does it look like? Water and fertilize everything, get it to grow like crazy. That soft growth attracts predators. Go in and kill the predators. The spray program is highly lucrative. Prune all that new growth, because of course now those trees are like going wild, can't have wild. And then because you've chopped everything off and sent to the landfill, you have to sell a water and fertilization program to restore health, and you can repeat that endlessly, and it's expensive. So how do we get away from this intensive kind of care? Because this is the look of our landscape industry now. It's all about killing and controlling. I call it the world of noise and poison. That's it. That's what they know. They don't have to know about plants. It's not really necessary. Pick three, what they call, what now I'm hearing are called the extremophiles. Pick three extremophiles and kill the rest. And why are all these chemicals bad for us? Because basically we are told that those chemicals kill, they're pesticides. Pesticides kill pests. Pests are fungi and bacteria and insects and weeds, but not human cells. They say, oh, no, these don't hurt humans. But what about our biome? Those are all those pests are our biome. And we now know that we cannot live a healthy life without a healthy biome. So it is up to us, totally up to us. So first thing to do is go outside and get to know your place. How well do you really know your place? Do you have one of these out front? Kind of not. That's number one. You're telling the neighborhood something. What about turn it around? Can your children and pets read that sign? Do you really want them there? So really get to know your place. Do you know the soil? Do you know what your ecoregion is? Do you know what was there before humans came? Do you know what could be there? Do you know what pockets of surviving wildlife might be really happy to be able to move into your yard? And remember that this is potential. I agree with what Rebecca said. We all need some lawn. Where else are you going to play with your kids? But rethink it. What are you putting on it? How is it growing? You can totally have, this is an organic lawn. Maybe a little short on clover because it's fairly new, and over time the clover will move in, which is what you want, fixing nitrogen. So what are we making a commitment to? I consider my core principles conserving resources, so that's like water and energy and soil, and of course plants, and building biodiversity. And those two core concepts really, really sum everything up. So number one, when you're out there, how about your decision-making process says, am I harming? Am I healing or harming? So do no harm means you're not killing anything. So insecticides, well, we've all gotten pretty savvy to the whole idea of monarchs coming in and eating leaves, and we love to see them, and we love to see that they're eating our leaves. But what about the other caterpillars that are eating like my maple tree, my red maple out front? trees evolved to feed insects. So that's the way they are. They are the salad bar for all non-human life forms. And we're not eating them, so we think that nobody else should. Well, that's not really sharing. And it's not supportive of the Earth system. So if you call someone to deal with this, right, and you're worried about it, keep in mind, your tree can lose 10 to 20, even up to 100% of its leaf surface for a year or two. It's designed to lose 10 or 20 every single year. And after this time of the year, by mid-August, your the leaves job is done. So when those leaf rollers move in and the other things that are starting to prepare for winter, it doesn't matter how much of a tree's leaves they are commandeering, because the tree doesn't need those leaves anymore. And back to this, Doug Talmy has this really great thing that he says, if you see herbivory on your plants, use the 10-step method, which is take 10 steps back. Solved, no more problem. So then but what if you saw this? What's the conventional approach? You see this, you call this guy, and then what about your chickadees? Like, what are they going to eat? Because Rebecca talked about how important caterpillars are to chickadees. And do you know what this is? Because one of the things that is core to my do no harm principle is that and Rebecca taught me this too, if you don't know its name, you can't really kill it. How can ethically you kill something if you don't even know what it is? So I can't actually ask you all to tell me if you know what this is. So I'm going to just jump in and tell you that this is the larval form of a ladybug. And like any teenager, it's voracious and it's going to eat your aphids like crazy, as it will do as an adult as well. But if you killed that scary looking bug, you would have completely interrupted the cycle. Same as if you sprayed for the aphids, how will you have enough of an aphid population so that the predators can come and get a real meal? They're not gonna, your predators are not sitting around hungry waiting for you to get aphids. You have to have the aphids in order to attract the predators. So take your time before you start killing things and stop chopping everything, because plants are beautiful in their natural forms. So why not plant with that in mind? Like, why not plant the plant that can grow without being chopped, without being girdled, without being harmed? Why take a perfectly nice tree and whack it into a globe? I kind of have a theory on that, which is that in the world of untrained landscaping and owners who are getting no good information, it's a whole lot easier to know your crew is kind of doing their job if a tree is turned into a geometric. So you can refer to your plants as the round one and the pyramid one and the square one, and you come home and there's not a little sprig sticking out and you say, oh, they've done their job. So the other really core component is closing the loop. And what it means to close the loop on your property is that nothing leaves, no biomass leaves. Biomass is every bit of organic matter that all your plants produce. That's the food your property made for itself. If you don't take it away, you don't have to buy anything back, which means immediately no plastic, no carbon footprint for the transportation, and none of overloading our landfills, which are now 20% of what they call landscape waste. It is so not waste. So I bring nothing in, and so it's kind of a game I play with myself. It's like, what do I do with all of this? First of all, get a mulching mower, leave your grass clippings. The thing that people miss is they forget to turn their irrigation off and they mow when it's wet. And then you will get nasty, slimy clumps around, and you will not find leaving the clippings exactly what you had in mind. But if you mow often and you mulch mow and you mow dry, your clippings will be gone by the end of the day. I keep everything, so keeping everything on my property is this fun game I play. So this is my homage à Monet. When I cut my meadow, I have all those grass clippings because you need to remove them in order to keep the soil and the place from succeeding, from secondary succession and going woody. So I started making haystacks. And then behind that is the wood that I removed. When I bought my property, it was one massive tangle of invasives. So when I cut them all away, I had a lot of dead trees to deal with. So I used them as hedges. And this is a lighter version. My cherry trees are always dropping twigs. So I made a wren tent. I didn't know it was going to be a wren tent. At first, it was just a habitat pile that was handy because it was right under the trees. But there's a little wren that hops in there every time my dog and I walk by. And she's got a lot of bugs to eat while she's in there. And this is what they do at Garden in the Woods, the Native Plant Trust. They brought in an artist to help them decide what to do with their extra biomass. And the whole mulch thing, people are spending unbelievable amounts of money, I have found out, on buying mulch. Mulch is a growth inhibitor. So if you're putting mulch around, maybe to protect the base of your tree, which would be a nice idea, but this is about hurting the base of your tree. This is a sales thing. You are being sold a lot of mulch. And this is really bad for trees. You can see that vertical crack in the tree. That indicates that the tree is too deep. Why not this instead? Rebecca touched on this with Heather Holmes' soft landings. Such a much better way to keep weed whackers from hitting your tree. And so here's a perfectly nice little bed, but it's filled with mulch. So what's the likelihood of those plants ever getting to touch each other? Plants are communal. They want to be in touch with each other. Wouldn't this be better? So if you don't have enough plants to do a really tightly packed full-on bed, you can either seed some native annuals in. Even non-native annuals are fine because most of them disappear once the cover comes in, or just start with a smaller bed and be sure to compost. Because what you're doing is you're making compost and you're putting the compost in your beds instead of mulch, because the compost will improve the soil and keep the whole system working. And over time, what I say is that we should not get plants and then change the soil to suit the plants. You choose the plants to suit your soil. Over time, your soil may evolve. If you're composting and working and keeping your biomass, you might just go from really, really sandy or super clay soil into something more adaptable to gardening beds, like fancy beds. But really, in the meantime, why not step into a successional partnership with your property and look at what it could have done historically and look at how you can work with it. Oh, by the way, that's my compost heap. It's in 3 parts. And since it is not a hot compost, I do not worry about having hot compost. That is a really high level, complicated thing to do. Just let it happen. We do turn it, but this is on the left is the one that's active. The other 2, they were sprouting and they happened to sprout a bunch of like weird gourds, and I let it go because it looks a lot prettier. And so increasing biodiversity means you want food, shelter, and water. That's the 3 components of habitat. So food is obvious, but sometimes not. If you were a bird, you would not stop here. There is absolutely nothing here to provide you with a single insect. There's no pollen, there's no nectar, there's no place to nest. How about this? This is by Abby Lawless. She's a really great designer who's making a lot of inroads into front yards. This is a friend of mine who said, okay, let's go for it. And this is the master of remember winter. Pete Adolf said once, it's most important that plants look good when they're dead. Well, these plants aren't exactly dead because they're just overwintering or something, but yes, keep them up, keep them going. And as I said, I cut my meadow and I stack it up into haystacks. And last winter, I have no idea what moved into this one because I couldn't find a single feather or a bit of fur, but something was spending the winter in there. And what about cavity nesting birds, the old chickadee story? Before we put out bird boxes, which I strongly encourage, what did they do? Well, they lived in trees. But these trees don't exist anymore. So a snag is a standing dead tree. Not only do they provide cavities, they provide instant food because they're full of insects. Can you find a place on your property where you can leave a standing dead tree? Just not over your car, but all the little stuff falls first and then bigger and bigger. And then when it's getting to look a bit wobbly, I decide which way I want it to fall and I push it over and it rots into the soil. Keep in mind also, Dead wood in trees does not need to be removed. You are not doing nature a favor. You are not helping trees by giving an arborist a lot of money to go in there and clean it all out. Trees manage it themselves, and those are bird feeders in there. And I also this year started a hibernaculum. This is a little home for snakes, because I found out that my Latin American garden team killed snakes on site. And I thought, oh my, we need a predator here for the white-footed mice and the massive amount of voles that were moving in. And maybe they were killing them and not mentioning it. So we've now turned the attitude towards snakes around, I hope. And I'm starting to see a lot more snakes in my garden since we made a commitment not to kill them. And so bird baths are fantastic. This little goldfinch comes every day by the light of the sun, right at a certain point in the afternoon. Make sure that your bird bath is shallow, because goldfinches can't swim and their legs are kind of short. So they want to have good footing and an easy place to perch and get a drink and keep it fresh. And these are what I call my bee beaches. I've designed a number of them. They're even shallower, and they have a constant little drip. You can plant water-loving plants on the exit part of the drip, and they love a little mud. Or if you, last year I built a pond. It's clay lined. I do not use plastic if I can possibly avoid it. The nice thing about clay is that you can plant right through it. And boy, just add water. Everything's coming. And so in terms of the lawn, you guys are going to get this in spades, right? A lot of stories about how to reduce your lawn, but one of my big things is clover. But this is Manitoga, which is it's a wonderful public garden in near the Bear Mountain Bridge. This place was abandoned for years. It was Russell Wright's house. He built it right into the land. When they came back to restore it a number of years after he died, the landscape was essentially intact, because it was just all the plants of the neighboring woods. But you can do it yourselves. A pool I built for a client, I think they were expecting a lawn. And this is who uses their front yard. Why not try something else? Or what about a client who basically did not love nature, but they bought the most spectacular natural place, so they just don't even touch the ground. But their raised walkways mean that every kind of wildlife can move either under them. If they're crawling animals, the plants move under, the water moves under, everything. All of the plant palette was also taken from the woods. And if you have a lot of lawn and you're not using it, just reduce it to some pathways. As the pathways, maybe if they get a lot of use, the grass starts wearing out. I use wood rounds. We cut slices of wood and set them in the path to absorb the impact. And this is the picture that Rebecca showed. And she was showing it as you don't need much lawn, but I also use it as an example of cues to care, because probably never going to use this lawn, but the fact is that it indicates that I have done this wild area intentionally by doing this little intervention of lawn. So letting go. Letting go is super important. You're going for resilience and you're going for relaxation. Resilience is picking the plants that I mentioned that are evolved or totally good and totally happy in the place. Do not try growing things that are difficult to keep alive, because that's just a lot of resource and a lot of stress. I did that when I was starting out as a gardener, and as a garden designer, I wanted the rarest, most unusual, what nobody else had. And now I've come really full circle of, I just want what's here, what wants to be here. And so one of the places where people use the most herbicide, the most Roundup, is weeds in their driveway. So why not let go? Why not just let your tires do the weeding? And my garden is wild. Now there's all kinds of wild, and people are all worried about, oh, what does wild mean? What's my garden going to look like? As long as you can keep some like straight paths and order in terms of your circulation through your garden, the beds can be as crazy as you like. I really am trying to show people that you can have a wild pollinator garden that does look good, but does not require the kind of maintenance that maybe the highline requires. And this is my other meadow. I just stopped mowing. I was lucky. The soil's really terrible and sandy, so it's self-editing. It doesn't change. And in the winter, it's incredibly beautiful. I did add the Nissus sylvaticas because they're my favorite tree. And this is like people trying to find their way to my front door. How wild is okay, but it makes me happy, and I just go out and do a little editing now and then. So this is the promise that you can make to your place. Less lawn, more life. Absolutely committing to no chemicals, no cheating. There's no reason for chemicals. If somebody tries to convince you that you need to use chemicals, could you call me and just write me, Edwina@perfectearthproject.org, and I will do my best to talk you out of it. Like, people are saying that we have to use this horrendous fungicide to keep our beech trees alive. We can't. This stuff is highly, highly toxic. And close the loop. See what you can do about that, about closing the loop on your property. It's really fun. Once again, watch our website for lots of ideas about what to do with your biomass. And above all, trust nature. Nature is trying to tell us things. She's sending us ticks. She's sending us invasives. She's sending us diseases to say, humans, you are disturbing me. So how are we meeting that challenge? Think about it. And stay in touch. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Edwina. That is incredible, so inspiring. And all of the examples too, just making it tangible, showing all the different examples, I hope is super helpful, and I'm sure it is inspiring to everyone watching this. Thank you. Thank you. So, by the way, I do know a couple people. I have arguments with the neighbors and friends about, no, trust me, I'm rewilding, it's all native. But in this instance, I do need to use pesticides. So I might take you up on that offer and put you in touch with a couple people. And that would be a fun debate, actually, to maybe record as well for the education of all.
Yeah, because
but
one of the things we do like to say to people, which is a bit intense, but you say, well, if you insist on spraying, please do not plant a pollinator garden because you're luring them to their death. And this includes tick sprays, which are organic because they are non-selective insecticides.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Questions?
All right. Hi. Let's see. We had one person, just so you know, Edwina, who wants to know if you're related to somebody she used to work with. You have the same last name, but I'll let you talk about
the chances are yes, because there are very few von Gals in the world. So.
And then let's see, lots of questions about the insecticide, so I will save those till a little bit later. We do have one that asks about what is your preferred method of managing wildflower meadow at the end of the summer, fall? Do you cut it? Do you remove the cuttings or let them decompose on site? And should I be mowing throughout the late spring and summer?
There are all different kinds of meadows. Perfect Earth is actually organizing a meadow symposium for this fall, so stay tuned for that. And it's meadow management, not design, not installation, just the management. But number one is you do not cut your meadow until as late in the spring as you possibly can, because your meadow is home to fireflies and all manner of turtles and things that need that meadow. The seeds for the birds, they need that meadow up all winter. And I've actually taken to cutting with a weed whacker because that way we don't have the wheels. You don't want to disturb the bases of your warm season grasses. And so with the weed whacker, you can cut like 8 to 12 inches high and leave it all there. I wait until I'm seeing a lot of the green coming up because warm season grasses are very late to show. And then we do rake off the extra grass. Some meadows are just too big for that, but it does help suppress succession, because what you want to do is, nature wants the land to improve, so it's going to want all of that plant material, all that biomass to go back into the soil and feed the next generation, which would be moving into woodies, because meadow plants are they're all opportunistic and they like to live where nobody else is.
Okay, so we have a lot of specific questions about specific herbicides, and I know we know the answer. You're going to say don't use them. But I think maybe people are trying to say, what do I do with specific issues like voles, which I think you probably answered. If you have voles in your tall grasses, you would encourage snakes potentially to develop, create habitat for snakes.
The saying in the world of all of this, which is that you don't have a pest problem, you have a predator problem.
Mhm.
So if you've got a pest.
Mhm.
And so what are your vole predators? Also, all populations live and die in arcs. So if your vole population, if you interrupt that arc of succession, you're going to continually reset it. So if your voles are on an ascendant, sine and cosine. So if your voles are on an ascendant and you keep knocking them back before the predator population is big enough and that population crests, you're going to be stuck with that same situation forever.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, and so I think another question, this is more around what would we use in lieu of herbicides if you're doing, let's say in my yard, for instance, this person asked, we chopped down some burning bush and at the base, and it keeps sprouting over and over again. And so what about those special little application herbicides that kill the root? So a question about that, what would we do instead?
It will give up if it cannot photosynthesize.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's as simple as that. What you do not want to do is cut it back in the spring, because the spring is when you cut to invigorate plants.
Right.
So that's counterproductive. So wait until your plant is pretty much finished with its rapid growth, that it's sucked all the winter storage energy out of the roots. And before it really starts restoring itself, that's when you whack it. And then going into the summer, make sure it's not getting watered. Make sure it's, do not compost it. Don't give it any help. It's insult and injury over and over.
Got it. Here's a question, and I think this is one that I think a lot of us think about. I don't want to pay for treatments if it's harmful for biodiversity, but there are certain insects that are invasive, and should we try to get rid of the host plant? I think she answered her own question there, but that is something.
I don't know what the host plant would be in this case, but I'm assuming that it's non-native.
It's do any insects or birds consume leaf miner?
Consume leaf miners? Well, I think there's a lot of different kinds of leaf miners, and that is not exactly my expertise, but I'm sure they do. There is nothing out there that isn't food for something else.
Right.
And so I can try to find that out.
Okay, well, yes, that would be great. We could always answer. And if anybody, we're not getting to your questions today, we're saving them all and we will answer them and provide them to you at a later date.
I'm thinking that in most cases I hear questions about leaf miners related to boxwood.
Right.
And a lot of times the boxwood in question, the cultural practices are extraordinarily important for boxwood. Remember the fact that American boxwood and English boxwood were favored. Like, they go back to colonial Williamsburg. They did not have insecticides then. They were fine because they didn't have irrigation systems and they weren't mulching like crazy. Boxwood hates mulch and it hates drip. And that's what, and definitely you would never want an overhead sprinkler to hit it. And all of those things are part of this cycle of dependency, because the more that just like one size fits all practices are imposed on plants, the more that one size fits all practices to correct all the problems can be sold to you.
Great. Let's see. I'm trying to see what other questions have been popping up here. I have hemlocks with woolly adelgid.
Woolly adelgid is a, I don't have a terrific, there is no known predator yet for the woolly adelgid. I have found that hemlocks, some of them simply survive, but once again, watering them is a bad idea. Fertilizing them, that's what the tree guys are going to sell you a fertilization program. Fertilization pushes soft growth, usually doing so at the time later in the season when the insects are more active. Most plants push their soft growth early before the insects are terrifically active so that they can harden off before they get munched. Soft growth, woolly adelgid is a sucking insect, so it needs to be able to penetrate the cell wall. And it can only do that when the growth is soft. And if you are fertilizing a plant and watering it like crazy, because supposedly you need to do something. Everybody feels like, and this is a wonderful thing for the tree industry to tell you you are doing something wonderful for your trees. Fact is, you're probably not.
Okay.
One more question I can pop in with, because I'm also, we get this question a lot, so I'd love to hear your responses around stilt grass. So a lot of people are like, no chemicals, no chemicals. They, they let go of the lawn, they put in a meadow, but then stilt grass is the thing that breaks them. Curious how you respond to that, right? It's so much to manage when it really becomes, if it's baked into the seed bed and so forth, right? Depending on the size. Curious what you would suggest there.
I have never had a problem with stiltgrass in full sun meadows with a well-established community of warm season grasses. Where the stiltgrass does seem to move in is as a place gets shadier and shadier. Then those grasses that were there before are starting to get a little weaker, and it gives stiltgrass an opportunity, because it will overwhelm, for instance, a bed of Carex pennsylvanica or something, because there's space in there, even though Pennsylvanica is stoloniferous, there's still like this little thinness there. I have found, well, first of all, stiltgrass is really easy to pull, but once again, it's a question of scale. But if you are on top of your own garden, just get it out of the ground early, because it has those little nubbins at the base of the plant that you can't even see, that they say also spread around. So you want to get it early, and you want to get it out. In larger patches, we weed whack them. Just cut it as close to the soil as you possibly can, and then get that out of there. My compost pile for stuff like that, we call the sucio pile, which means dirty in Spanish. And the sucio pile is on its own. I would not send an invasive plant to the landfill. That is not fair. So put it somewhere in your property and manage it. Turn it every time it sprouts, turn it again. And sooner or later, when it stops sprouting, you'll know that they've given up. And then you have you need a couple of them, because you got one that you're turning and one that you're using.
That's excellent. An excellent pro tip in terms of how to dispose of it as well. Sometimes we forget about that. That's fantastic. Just a quick note, some of the questions also, or chats, are just related to, like where we'll find these questions or responses if we're not on Facebook. So we will make a point to create a Q&A document and actually also host it on the website, lesslawnmorelife.com. So if you're not on Facebook, you can also find all the resources there, and we'll huddle up with Edwina after this and make sure we get all the questions answered. So much, Edwina. Incredible as always. An honor to have you with us. Thank you everybody for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Visit my garden on Eastern Long Island. Just make an appointment. We're open for tours.
Great.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks
Have a good
lot.
Thursday.